Hi, I'm Peter Kaldes, President and CEO of the American Society on Aging, and welcome to Season 5 of Future Proof, ASA's webcast with changemakers in aging. This season, Marsh Ryerson, President of AARP Foundation, joins us as guest host of 5 episodes exploring innovative approaches to fighting poverty with leaders in the community and how these approaches can build opportunity across generations. We're delighted to be partnering with AARP Foundation on this series as we launch a year of programming on advancing economic security and how it intersects with aging, equity, and innovation. We hope you enjoy this episode, and please join us all season long. I want to welcome you to Season 5 of Future Proof. And for this season, we're doing things just a little bit differently. We're very excited that we have Marsh Ryerson, President of the AARP Foundation, taking over the mic, taking over the episodes. She's going to be our guest host, talking with leaders in the community about innovative approaches to fighting poverty. Lisa, welcome to Future Proof.
Peter, it's first of all great to be with you and to recognize your incredible leadership. And thanks for having me as a guest host of this terrific Future Proof series.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. And for those who don't know Lisa, Lisa is really the one and only at the AARP Foundation who sets strategic direction and steers its efforts to realize an audacious vision, a country free of poverty, where no older person feels vulnerable. Since she took the helm, the foundation has implemented pioneering initiatives, explored new avenues for collaboration, and secured unprecedented funding to support programs and services that truly change lives. Lisa has also served on the boards of numerous higher education and nonprofit organizations, both at the local and national level. And really, her work at AARP Foundation has she's spearheaded innovative partnerships with other organizations to create and advance effective solutions that help vulnerable older adults increase their economic opportunity and social connections. Lisa, we could go on for hours about your background and accolade, but I think
not about my background, about our work together, because one of our most innovative collaborations is with you, Peter, and with ASA.
Well, we're excited about it, and we're excited about this upcoming season of Future Proof because I think we often ignore the issues of poverty in older adults, and I suspect you know this firsthand. I mean, it's a simple concept that poverty among older people exists, but you know that it's much more complicated. You know that we need to figure out how it's defined, how it's measured, by whom, how it's changing, how COVID has changed it all. This is very, very complex. It's a complex field. So I want to start sort of at a really high level for folks who might not be in the weeds on these issues. What are some statistics? What do we know about poverty among older adults?
Great. Thank you, Peter. And I really appreciate your introduction because we've accepted in some senses that poverty is part of society, right? Just a fact. And so you and I will get back to why that is foundationally a problem for us. But senior poverty is a problem hidden in plain sight, Peter, and it's a growing problem. Even pre-COVID-19, we knew that 37 million adults age 50 and older were already either living in poverty as defined by the federal poverty level or one life event away from slipping into it. And we certainly know that those numbers have increased during the course of the pandemic. And it's complex, as you're saying, Peter, because this is about certain issues that can occur as one ages, right? Age discrimination, as you and I know, is alive and well. So it could be job loss, it could be not having emergency savings or carrying debt burden, which is too extreme. into later years. It might be about caregiving, having to step out of paid work to caregive, either for children or grandchildren or older adults in our lives. Or it may be that you have a disability and are unable to continue in your work or employment. As importantly, Peter, and the two of us have talked about this before, you certainly know it in your leadership across your career, we have deep embedded disparities and inequities in society. And so those, if one is locked out of opportunity earlier in life and that continues across the life course, then the individual is on a pathway for senior poverty. And we have certainly seen during the pandemic how the pandemic has exacerbated these deep disparities and inequities and divides in our nation, and increasing the unfortunate opportunity for more older adults to fall into poverty. Finally, Peter, I'd say that we see poverty as a person did something wrong. We see it as an individual's failure to plan or make sound decisions. That isn't a fact, right? It really is a societal or national illness, societal problem that we have to solve together.
You know, I'll add one more element to the complexity, and it's one that the ASA is going to be tackling as one of its policy priorities, and that is the impact of climate change.
That's
and
it.
The impact of climate change on vulnerable communities first and foremost, and how that will impact their, candidly, bottom line.
Yeah.
We see fires, we see hurricanes, we see rising waters, all impacts economic security of an older adult. So
that's right.
I'm going to add that to the mix.
Let's put that into the mix as a social problem and as a social determinant of health, Peter. So I'm excited that you've taken it on as a policy issue and as a programmatic issue as well. It's, you know, fundamentally, the two of us know the following, as do I hope our viewers or listeners. Vulnerable people are in locations that are more vulnerable when there are natural or man-made disasters, and we keep putting them back in those vulnerable locations. So we need to be more oriented towards solutions.
So let's talk about those individuals. You've identified the sort of systemic problems, the ingredients to what causes poverty amongst older adults. Let's talk about the impact it has on the individuals who are experiencing it and the communities that they're living in.
Great, great, happy to. And as we were talking about some of the statistics, I do think it's important for me to state what we know about the data, which is that women are more at risk for poverty as they age for a variety of reasons that we'll talk about throughout the series. And older adults and women in particular of color are at greater risk. And also older adults who have been locked out of educational attainment are at greater risk. So we'll hold that over there. I think what's important to know is there's no one profile of an older adult who is struggling with poverty, except that shared experience of lack of access, consistent access to opportunity. And so you see a number of older adults who are surviving, not thriving, and always tied to the ability to have consistent income across a life course, as well as consistent access to community supports and resources, and a thriving social network for support. People are really struggling. And if an older adult is struggling, likely the family is struggling. These are complex issues. Who defines poverty is also complex, because we often want to sit off in a room and have kind of an academic conversation about it. We have to be working with people first to let us know about their circumstances, their lives and experiences, their lived experiences, their experiences in communities, and what they need to tap into their own resilience. Finally, Peter, as you and I have talked on many occasions, who loses? The individuals who are struggling have loss in their life, but we lose in society because we are discounting, cutting ourselves off from the contributions that all members in community can and must make to have the healthiest communities nationwide.
You know, it strikes me as you were mentioning that last point, that there's an extraordinary amount of resilience here as well.
Absolutely.
You know, so many communities have been doing so much with so little for so very long, that you have, as a result, deep embedded generational economic insecurity
That's
issues
right.
that we have to tackle, right?
Oh, absolutely. And also knowledge that we have to gain from individuals, as you're sharing, Peter, who have this lived experience, who actually have co-created themselves solutions in their life journeys. So important to me that as we think about investments that need to be made to solve poverty, that we first up our collective will to get it done. In other words, we just have to put on the table, this is systemic, meaning, and systems are created by people. So we have created systems and supported systems that leave people and people of certain identities and the intersection of those identities outside of opportunity. We then sometimes further other people might sit from a position of privilege to explain who people are who live in poverty, as opposed to creating more seats at the table and sharing the power with individuals with the experience who can lead us toward those solutions. So, and learn from the resiliency, as you're saying, Peter. Why, when we think about investments, let's go into communities and ask people and organizations who have been doing the work what investments work and what investments they need.
So Lisa, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the AARP Foundation's work. I know you divide it up into three main areas: economic opportunity, social connection, and legal advocacy. So let's talk about your work right now on poverty and how it intersects with all these focus areas.
Yeah, and you're right. All of those three main areas, they blur, right? They are all connected to one another. So both at our work at AARP Foundation and then work that I and others have done when we founded the Root Cause Coalition, which is addressing social determinants of health, we recognize that poverty is the ultimate social determinant of health. What that means in the work of AARP Foundation, Peter, is that in our new strategic plan, we just are keenly focused on increasing income. Individuals need the resources, income and community supports and connections, and then they will make the choices about how to live their lives and move from surviving to thriving. So for us, that is about quality jobs with opportunities for benefits. So meaningful, purposeful work and quality jobs. It is about access to critical refunds and credits. Think about our very large, for example, AARP Foundation tax aid program and our property tax aid program. And it is also about expanding our collective understanding about what benefits are, and then opening up our aperture and the pipelines to access those sustaining benefits, because we know the social safety net is eroding. We wrap that. We measure on income for everything. Because of us, have we increased income? We wrap all of that with legal advocacy to be sure you have those systemic changes in courts at all levels across the nation. And then further, Peter, the most exciting thing about our work right now, from my point of view, we made the decision. We are not assuming that just because we work in anti-poverty work and work with populations who have been left, people who've been left behind. So older adults, women, older people of color, older LGBTQ individuals who have been locked out of opportunity, persons with disabilities, and the intersection thereof. We now hold ourselves accountable to increase equitable outcomes, to build into our plan the disproportionate effort it will take to be sure those income outcomes are distributed equitably. So it's a very, very exciting time for us, Peter.
We're really proud also to have joined in on some of your legal advocacy efforts in particular.
Yes.
As you know, as a former attorney, I know the power of the courts to create justice. And some of your important work fighting ageism, fighting LGBT discrimination. Thank you so much for leading that effort, and we're proud to join
And
in
we will
that.
remain in it, Peter, because and I'm only smiled when you said former attorney, because in my experience, once always. And I think that's important. It's a way of thinking about the world, asking questions, and viewing problem solving. So know that you will continue to count on us, because we have to have justice solutions that provide a framework for all sectors in society to do better and to understand what they are accountable for and to do the right work. This is fighting poverty is multi-sectorial. It does require innovation, but whole communities have to be responsible for the solutions.
So let's talk about some of the solutions. Let's talk about some of the upcoming episodes this season. You'll be speaking with leaders in our communities who are combating poverty with some really interesting solutions. What are some of the top solutions that come to mind for you? What are some folks doing that you're excited about sharing with the Future Proof audience?
Yeah, so stay tuned. I'll give just enough of a tease for the preview of the series, but the series is reflective, you're right, Peter, of what excites me, excites all of us at AARP Foundation. So what about learning across the life course? And because the data reminds us that low educational attainment is so foundational in terms of whether or not you fall into poverty across your life course, we'll be talking about education. What is it? What should it be in the future? Not just access to education, but all of the supports needed to learn across the lifespan, both to improve quality of life and also to improve quality of jobs. We'll talk about workforce today. What about age discrimination? Age discrimination is alive and well. How do we come together to end it? So how do you fight that in the courts? How do we think about age discrimination in society and understand that in the economic downturn and with the phenomena now about an aging society, we need older workers. It's good for the bottom line. Multi-generational workforces are important. We'll be talking about income levels and intergenerational opportunities, grandmothers raising children, some interesting solutions that are put forward about putting money in people's hands to support their ability to move out of poverty as well. So I'm excited about all those solutions, because we've got to be really careful that we're walking our talk, not just continuing to talk about the problem. So what excites me is the work AARP Foundation is doing in communities nationwide with people and organizations so that more people thrive as they age.
I'm glad you highlighted and previewed some of the ageism related work. In addition to climate change,
Yes.
Combating ageism is actually a policy priority of the ASAs as well now. And it strikes me that there's so much low-hanging fruit there legislatively that I think we can work together to advance. So I look forward to partnering with you on that. And about legislation,
yes,
as we're recording this, Congress is considering $400 billion
right now
in care infrastructure. I think it's happening as we speak.
I think so.
With a markup. Obviously these would create greater access to caregiving services in the home and the community for older adults and people with disabilities, of course, with the Medicaid program, and ultimately would raise wages and really create good jobs for direct care workers. I'm wondering, we're interested in this legislation. Obviously, many of our members are in the business of providing such services.
That's right. But
also, there's a health equity lens to this, which is another policy priority of the ASAs. I'm curious, how would passing this legislation impact older adults with the work you're doing?
Yeah, I think you've hit on a couple of the ways that from an AARP Foundation standpoint, this legislation is so important. So first and foremost, given our earlier conversation about legislative advocacy, think about the ability to have resources to support home and expansion of home and community support services and care. There are so many older adults who are unable to remain in their most independent choice, which is aging within their community, because they do not have access to affordable home and community-based care. That absolutely changes the pathway for a great number of low-income older adults. You also hit on the notion of direct care workers or healthcare workers across a variety of licensure levels and care levels. Traditionally, these workers, think about what we were saying earlier about the statistics for low-income older adults, a high number of women, a high number of people of color, a high number of individuals who have not had access to learning pathways in their jobs to have better wages. So anything that increases quality job, meaning family sustaining wages and other benefits that support the individual and their families, is really a plus. And then, Peter, I have to say, this won't surprise you from all of the work that my colleagues are doing across AARP. 48 million people are family caregivers, providing over, $470 billion in care, the equivalent of that. So the recognition of the role of family caregivers and what they are doing to promote health equity and the financial supports that they and their families need are significant for them and significant for society. I think most importantly, what excites me is that there are many determinants that really come together when you think about this possible legislation.
Absolutely.
And the tax credits, just the supports for workers, for family caregivers, for older adults.
For those of us in aging, I have to say, this is a remarkable time to be living through, particularly in DC.
Yes.
When you have the President of the United States, you have senior leaders in Congress, you have the entire Congress talking about these issues.
Aging.
In a way that we didn't think was possible. And we're nearly there. We're nearly there at the finish line, aren't we?
We are nearly there at the finish line. And so this and other topics and legislation that might be considered, it is really exciting. It would have a measurable impact on ending senior poverty, Peter. And we're part of the conversation and we are accountable to it as well as partners in this space. I Peter, am so, our Future Proof episode, the series that I have the privilege of guest hosting, fits so neatly with our priorities at AARP Foundation and integrate, not just align, and integrate with the priorities that you are leading as CEO of ASA. It's an exciting time. I'm so thrilled for your extraordinary leadership and all that we can do together to create a different future, to really have systems in place that end poverty and systems in place that offer pathways for opportunity and fertile ground so that older adults of all identities can contribute across their life course.
That is a wonderful way to end our opening episode, where I hand off the mic to you,
Thank you
for the Future Proof series. And I want to hear how it goes in person, Lisa, in
Great.
New Orleans in April.
I will be there.
At our On Aging conference, which, as you know, is
Yes.
the theme is advancing economic security.
Yes,
So this is our entire year of work that we're going to be leading together this year. Our members are going to be engaged. We've already had record-setting proposals submitted for the April conference, and I know so many of us are looking to get back together again. So I'll see you in New Orleans.
I'll be there. I can't wait. You know me, I'm a practical optimist. We will be together in April in New Orleans.
Fantastic.
And let's see how far we've moved on our agendas.
Absolutely. And so stay tuned for the next episode of Future Proof, where Lisa will talk about income for mothers and grandmothers. And I'm looking forward to that conversation. It's such an important one. Lisa, thank you so much for hosting, and I look forward to seeing you in person soon.
I can't wait, and I'll take good care of your mic, Peter, I promise.
Thanks, Lisa.
Bye.